All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler. And Martyn, a familiar face, joins us here on the podcast today.
Yeah, we've welcomed him before and we're welcoming him again. Mike Ford, the managing director of Oldham Rugby League Club. We met him, I think, probably about 18 months ago when Mike was pretty newly installed, really, at Oldham. And we heard about how ambitious the club was, how ambitious Mike is, and, how he and his colleagues were hoping to build a really big future for what is one of the most traditional clubs in the game, really. And 18 months down the track, quite a bit of that ambition has been fulfilled, Mike. Um, Welcome to the podcast. And I think we can say with some, confidence that you've made progress in that time since we last had you on this on this podcast.
Yeah, good morning, lads. It's my pleasure to be on again, and thanks for allowing me. Yeah, we're sitting fourth in the championship. I read in the Rugby League Express paper at the beginning of the week about this new competition, potentially under Super League, One League, and a couple of comments on there that when you get promoted from League One, notoriously, you're getting relegated the year after. So we from that point of view, from a performance point of view, winning in it, the League One in 24 and doing what we're in the playoffs. We've got a home quarter final, if you like, on the 19th of September, which is great. I think the progress can be seen on the field for sure, and the recruitment we've done, Martyn. I know you'll be keeping abreast of that. Signing a few Super League players. Our ambition is there for everyone to see.
Yeah, you are one of the 12 clubs who have, put down an initial marker for Super League next year, which obviously illustrates your ambition. Bill Quinn, your chairman, is a very ambitious guy, just as you are. And also, what's probably also just as important is he's got quite a lot of financial resources that he can back up that ambition with. I don't think most people would think you're the favourites to get the nod from the panel that's going to be chaired by Lord Jonathan Kane, but you're actually not. It wouldn't surprise me enormously if you did get the nod. Obviously, you've got to put your application together, but how's it? How are you going to do that, and how do you think it's going? It must be an interesting time for you.
Yeah, it is. We've had it since the announcement of 14 teams and the criteria of how you can apply to be that 13th or 14th team. We won't be anywhere near the 12th IMG score. We're only on 7 points. Of course, of our history over the last few years has not helped where we played, and the fans' attendances that we've got over the last 5 years or so has not helped us. So we're down at the bottom. So we have to apply for the 13th and 14th spot, and we understand the like I said, the criteria of that, and there's two main things: is financial sustainability and your playing performance, what you can potential. This is where you are now with your current squad, and what potentially you could put together in the future. So you mentioned Bill Quinn. He's our chairman. He came in a couple of months after we took over the club, and the thing that attracted me to him was that he's been here before. He was chairman of Oldham Rugby for 3 years in 2007. They did quite well. They got to finals, but lost the finals, and so he understood the financial landscape better than me. And we've worked closely together for 2 years. He's probably a bit more ambitious than me. He never takes a backward step. He always wants to move forward. Even when things financially a little bit tricky, he'll double down on his ambition of where we want to go. So, we feel that although we might not be favourites in the public eye, because of our recent history, I think that's the reason we're not one of the favourites because for the last 20 years we've been under Super League, probably more since we got the club went bust in '97. But if you just forget the history and take where you are now and the clubs that potentially involved in the application, I think we're on an even ground, and I think we've got a great chance of putting in a really strong Super League bid. The opportunities we have in Oldham that probably people don't know about are fantastic. We have to go out and grab these opportunities. But I'll give you a couple of examples, Martyn. Our training facility down in Chadderton is a piece of land in Oldham that is unloved. It used to be Hollingwood Rugby League football, where they leased it off the Rugby Football League. And they played there since 1979, and since the pandemic, they've been unable to, field a team. So we've come in, took the lease over, and we're actually in the process, very, very, in the next couple of weeks, of buying the land outright off the Rugby Football League. The land, a good piece of history for you, Martyn. The land was initially owned by a guy called Joseph Platt.
Oh, the original secretary of the Rugby Football League, or the
Yes,
Northern Union, as it used to be.
that's right. In 1895, he's from Oldham. He's the secretary, and when he passed away, he donated the land to the community of rugby in Oldham, to the Rugby Football League. So, to the point being, we're going to take ownership of that land in the next couple of weeks, and we're in a consultation with the council to extend some land, no man's land behind, and we've got some fantastic plans to build what I believe will be, although I don't know this for certain because I've not been around every rugby league club, but it'll be up there in terms of a training facility, not only for the first team, but for all our pathways and scholarships and academy and reserves, and also for the community of rugby. And in the plans, we've got things like paddle courts, tennis courts, an indoor sports hall, car parking for 200 cars. That's how big the land is. And we've actually got some stadia that can seat 750 people. So we can have junior finals there, we can have football finals there. So my point being is, when I left Oldham Rugby for the first time in, I think it was 1991, we at Watershed, Martyn, we had a dog track, didn't we? We had our own training facility. We had
It was
our
a
own
much loved stadium, mate, but it really wasn't up to modern standards, was it? To be honest,
it wasn't. But the point being, it was Oldham's.
Yes, exactly.
And it was a legacy in some respects, and the amount of land there was absolutely huge. And through whatever mismanagement, that got sold, and they moved to Boundary Park, and a year later they went bust. So mine and Bill's second purpose of buying Oldham Rugby is to leave a legacy, and we over the last 2 years since I last spoken to you, this opportunity down at our training facility is one that we can't miss. We'll be able to have income. We'll be able to have a facility there that's Oldham Rugby's forever. So that's one good example of things that other clubs, if you're saying we're not the favourites because of our recent history, we want the world to know that behind us we've got a lot of help there, a lot of backup through our training facility. And the other one, Martyn, and you might have seen this in the news, is at Boundary Park, where we're a partner in this new sports town where they're going to develop Boundary Park. There's three areas they want to develop. One is sport education, the second is medical. They want a medical facility because across the road from Boundary Park is our NHS hospital.
Right.
And the third thing is obviously is Oldham Athletic and Oldham Rugby. They want to bring Manchester Thunder up there. They want to do cricket. So the plans for them are already underway. They got the first grant of £5 million from the government, and they're just at the moment, as we speak, doing the top floor of the Boundary Park, changing that, not changing it because it doesn't not been developed yet, but putting that into an education facility as well as an hospitality one, and then the 3 or 4G pitch is going to be ready for September. So that's the first phase of things. Netball courts are going in as well. So again, it's without a backer there. So take Bill Quinn away for a minute. You know, in a few years' time, Oldham, I'm hopefully Rugby League will be very, I won't say sustainable to the where we break even, but we have other opportunities of bringing away from a match day experience of paying fans. We'll have completely income coming in every week away from the rugby.
That's got to be the objective. Jake, if you were on the panel deciding who'd be in Super League, would you now be a bit more inclined to go for Oldham over some of the other potential applicants? Having listened to what Mike's just said.
Absolutely, mate. You've put forward a great proposal there, mate, and I'm sure there's plenty else you'd like to include when you do have to put that Super League bid forward, mate. But just over the last 12 months or so, have you noticed that change in the vibe around Oldham, the fans coming to the game? It feels like there's a future for Oldham, and do you feel like the fans have got a sense of that now?
Yeah, 100%. Our fans have been brilliant. We during the season, we had something like, I think it was 8 consecutive home games at the beginning of the season. You know, we got drawn at home in the 1895. We got drawn home in the Challenge Cup. Our first 2 league games were at home. We had 2 friendlies that were at home. So that was a lot of toll on our fans. And at the first, we were disappointed. I think we got 3,000 against Wigan, but we were disappointed with the crowds. But we put it all in perspective, and we get through that period, and then we've then have to leave Boundary Park for the pitch maintenance. So there's been little bits and pieces that's not helped. But since we've come back to Boundary Park, the buzz around the town, of us, cementing 4th spot, if you like, and an home playoff has been incredible. I think the most pleasing thing, Jake, is the kids and the pathways. You know, our pathway. I don't know if you remember what I said when, the first July we took over 2 years ago. Now we got nearly 300 kids coming down to train for our pathway, to go for the trials, if you like. That's not changed. That's got stronger. We've done a lot of work with the coaches in Oldham, and the pathway provide the enthusiasm. You know, the kids wearing the shirts when they go to the ground now. And that, I mentioned legacy being our number 2 purpose. That'll be our number 1 purpose. That I know, Martyn, you'll be all over this. Where how many Super League world class players come from Oldham in the past 20 years. So
you'd need quite a few fingers to count them, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
including yourself, of course.
Yeah. So thank you. So the kids are the ones we just who drive the enthusiasm. They bring the mums and dads along, don't they? So we're all over that. We'll be applying for an academy license in January 27, for example. That's when the next licenses come up. So, we've launched our women's team on Saturday. When we took over, we inherited a women's team. It wasn't quite right with the management of that. So we closed it down and made sure that, come Saturday, it was all up and running with the right infrastructure there. So we had 24 girls come along. So that was a great moment for us. And, next year we'll look to January, February, look to play some games in the development league. So, yeah, it's all coming together at the right time.
Just ask you one question that some people have sort of raised with me. As we speak today, Salford are facing a court hearing with a winding up order having been brought by HMRC. None of us know how that's going to turn out at the moment. I've read a range of possibilities from the terrible to a possible adjournment and so on. Who knows until the news comes out? But given their troubles, it looks unlikely that Salford would be in Super League next year, one would imagine, unless a miracle occurs. And quite a few people have said that, we need a club that's sort of fairly close to the heart of Greater Manchester in Super League. And I think geographically, you fit that bill, don't you? I know Wigan is technically in Greater Manchester, but and so are Lee, but they're quite some distance away from the centre of Manchester, and you're much nearer.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important that incredible conurbation of Manchester has a Super League team that they can relate to. And if it's not going to be Salford, perhaps that's a factor that should point in your direction, Mike.
Yeah. First of all, I think Salford, we all hope that they survive, don't we?
Absolutely.
I think if you critically look at the applications for next year's Super League, one is financial sustainability and the other one is playing performance. I think Salford, selling all the players, certainly at the performance side, they won't tick that box. And the financial sustainability, well, we all know where they are with that. So I suspect 3 teams from the Championship will go up, and potentially Salford will come down. It's funny you mentioned Manchester because I can't remember his name now, but when Tonga played Great Britain a couple of summers ago, the manager of the Tongan team was also the manager of the Dolphins in Brisbane.
Right.
The Redcliffe Dolphins, and I had a chat with him about marketing and a name change. We just took over. We just took over the Roughyeds, and we actually did it on Deansgate in the middle of Manchester. We had the meeting there, and he just said, "Look, you need Manchester. You need Manchester in your name somewhere along. You need to exploit this great city." I said, "Oh well, the older supporters, they won't agree to that.
No.
The Roughyeds and the history that we've got, because we're 150 years next year, Martin. So that's another milestone for the club." And he was talking about they're called the Dolphins, aren't they? They're not called the Redcliffe Dolphins. And
Brisbane. They're not called the Brisbane Dolphins either.
Yeah. So, and he was saying that they've kept the old name, the Redcliffe, in the teams underneath them, like the reserve grade. I don't know what, or and potentially their development team. So we did look at it at the time. Obviously, Salford were thriving then, and we talked about a potential name change to and captured Manchester. So we actually came out with, boringly, Oldham Rugby League 1876. We put 1876 on because we wanted to recognise our history, and we've got 150 years. But we are now started talking now recently about exactly what you've just said there. How can we capture the Manchester and be that Manchester club? Because Salford, in its own right, it's a city on its own, isn't it? So
yes.
We will be foolish not to explore that opportunity.
Absolutely. And the one thing that strikes me, though, Mike, in your situation at the moment, it must be incredibly difficult to plan for next season, because obviously you've got this application going forward. At this moment in time, you've no idea whether you're going to, well, you probably, say you've no idea. You're going to be either in Super League or the Championship, but you don't know which. So how are you actually going to recruit as though you are a Super League club, as Lee and Wakefield have done in the past, even when they've been in the Championship? How would you go forward on that basis?
Yeah, I think if nothing had changed, Martin, there were 14 teams going up this year, or 2 new teams, or potentially 3 new teams from the Championship, we would have probably finished our recruitment now for 26 on the basis of trying to do what a Lee and a Wakefield did. Like, so we would have gone really strong. At the moment, with our Super League bid, we've got to make assumptions of how much funding. They've not told us how much funding
No,
that we're going to get. So
no.
so you've got to make assumptions that,
You're planning in a vacuum, aren't you, in a way?
yeah. So we've actually paused recruitment, which is the first time since I've took over. We've paused recruitment, which is a bit tricky. Is a bit tricky because, as you know, the best players all get signed up, don't they, and stuff.
Right.
We've got a list of players, and we're talking to agents actively. The agents are very, very understanding that this Super League bid is ongoing. So to plan for it, you have to have about 4 or 5 different scenarios. Of, like, if you're in the Championship and it's one league and Toulouse, York, and Bradford go up, what does that look like for us? Do you know, if 2 Super League teams don't make the 13th and 14th and it stays pro rata like it is today, because that's a possibility.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
you know, or another one is if we go up, and then so that's the budget side of it, the playing side of it. It's quite tricky, and it's forever moving. It moves every single day. The other part of it is if we did get to Super League in 26, what are the rules for 27? Because at this moment in time, it's still IMG rules. So the top 14 teams will get the top 14 spots. But
Yes.
there's talk about, the balance of the point scoring in IMG. So performance is only a quarter of the points. They might take that to be 50%. This is all just chatter at the moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, but keep an IMG in there somewhere, but with a more weighted direction towards performance. So, but again, the thing is, we don't know.
Do you think it was a good idea to move to 14 next year, or do you think it should have been delayed by a year and, to 2027?
I think you have to be in that Super League meeting to understand the full
Yeah.
issues with that. I think they've done it because, my opinion, they've done it because of the TV deal. They want to be more attractive to Sky. The TV deal's up, and they want to be more attractive to Sky. Come up with, I mean, they talk about this nine-a-side competition. They're trying to obviously got rid of the loop fixtures. Personally, when you say who's ready for Super League, of them teams I've mentioned there, Martyn, Toulouse, York, Bradford, and us, I don't think I don't think anybody's ready. To
I, I think you're right, and I think that's why. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? When Catalans first came into Super League, they had a 3-year period of grace where they weren't threatened by relegation. They could build for 3 years, and to be blunt about it, Mike, that's what you all need. I think now, isn't it? I would say, if you're going to come into Super League next year, or if it is Toulouse or York or London or whoever it might be, you need that assurance of 3 years at least in the competition to be able to plan properly. I mean, the idea of coming in and then being relegated immediately,
yeah, that's
obviously
good.
starting from a fairly weak beginning, which is pretty inevitable, really. It would just be ridiculous, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think that's the problem we have. I mentioned earlier, Martyn, about our IMG score is very, very low. It'll go up this year, no doubt, but we've still got, they go back 3 years, don't they, with the IMG scored financially and attendances, for example. In 26, we get rid of our third year, which shoots us up again. But at the moment, we believe that should we get the Super League place in 26, then we're going to be the bottom of the 14 teams, IMG. So we'll be really precarious if they keep the same system of the top 14 teams on IMG scores alone. We believe we'll be the bottom. So, like you just mentioned, we don't want to go full time and everything, and infrastructure in that, only to find ourselves this time next year is back in the Championship.
Precisely, yes.
It'll be that's something that they've got to look at between now and then of how
Yes.
to. And I think you said 3 years. We'll be more than happy with a 2 year grace. And the other thing, Martyn, I'm we're not stupid in terms of look at Wakefield's score this weekend against Huddersfield, 48, and there's been, take Salford aside, there's been some big scores, and these are Super League clubs against Super League clubs. That
Absolutely.
Leeds going to Castleford and scoring whatever they scored, 60
Yeah.
odd. That would never been done in my time. So how are we as in the two clubs that go up? There's going to be a season there of 26 games where you might only win 3. How does we thought about that? How does that work for our fans and for the the culture of the club and people back? So if we can say to the fans, bear with us in that first season, it's going to be difficult. But second season we should be more accomplished and we should be able to compete every single week.
Absolutely.
I think that's the key.
Yeah. The other thing too is like, how are you meant to give your sponsors and I guess the corporate partners any stability if you don't know if you're going to be in there? Because I think if a corporate sponsor came along and said, all right, they're going to be in Super League for 3 years regardless, they're more likely to invest in your club.
Yeah, 100%, Jake. And that's a difficult. We're doing our shirt sponsors for next year, and we have to do 2 contracts with them, one for the Championship and one for Super League. And then if I knew, like you just mentioned, we're in for 2 or 3 years, that contract could be 2 or 3 years. But at the moment, it's 1 year, so it makes it all very, very much a little bit more difficult for us.
And let's just assume for a moment, Mike, that you're not one of the 3 clubs who get pushed up into Super League, and that next year you're still in the Championship. You will still have that ambition, won't you? You'll still want to be a Super League club, and hopefully you'll develop to be one in the future. But what's going to be the potential, or how is it going to be managed so that it's possible for a Championship club to become a Super League club after this current exercise is finished? Will it still be just based on grades, as you say, the IMG grading system, which I must say I just think is ridiculous personally, but that's a system we've got at the moment. Will it be based on some form of promotion? Will there be annual promotion? Will there be relegation? What's going to go on? Because all of that is so important, isn't it? I think, anyway.
Yeah. I don't think, Martyn, I don't think anybody knows. I really don't. I don't think, and in the future that meetings will crop up because of these questions everyone's asking. Meetings will crop up, and the people will go to these meetings. This is my view of it, and you don't know what's going to be said in the meetings. You don't know. I always tell a story of when I was coaching England. And we were having a selection meeting, and England Rugby Union, sorry. And we were having a selection meeting, and Lawrence Delalio was captain when we first went in, start of the autumn series. And when we came out, he wasn't even in the team. So I think, when you get a group of people in a room and we all have different opinions, and people, the best talker in the room and very influential, and, things unfold. So to answer your question, if we don't get a Super League this time, we'll continue our recruitment to try and win the Championship in 26. And I think that's all you can do. Hopefully, I would mention our IMG points. If that's still in, our IMG points are much better. Hopefully, the pendulum swung towards the IMG score to be more performance. So if you win it, I can get that. You get more points. But the other thing that really scares me is that we do all things that I've just mentioned in 26 in the Championship, but then we don't go up in 27. Do you know that'll be deflating for the town for sure.
Yes, yeah, of course. What do you think about? I mean, there are lots of issues, and I assume those issues that we're talking about are going to be discussed and hopefully analysed by the strategic review committee that's being chaired by Nigel Wood. Nigel is obviously now has come back into the Rugby Football League into a very senior position there, as with the board of directors. Do you have confidence in that process, Mike? And did you support Nigel coming back? Given what happened earlier this year with the previous board of directors departing the RFL.
Yes, I did support it. I think the way it's all unfolded for Oldham is that we took the club just over 2 years ago. So we're going to these council meetings. The first council meeting, and that's the first time I heard of IMG, and there was a vote, and we just sat there and listened, and basically that's what we do at Oldham. We go and listen to everybody's views and try and make an opinion from that. But the Nigel Wood situation, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming that they needed him back, or someone of his ilk back, because the sport was was tinkering on, another Super League,
wasn't it, really?
Yeah, and another Super League deal was Sky Sports deal was coming up, and they all felt, people who've been in the game longer than me. I know I maybe debuted in 1982, but I've been out of the game for 20 years, 25 years. So that people, and I listened to them and supported them. And since Nigel's come in, the strategic review, the way they've gone about that, I've been to, we have far more opinionated in them sort of meetings, the Championship and the League One, because we feel that we understand that competitions better. The way that's gone, for example, for next year and the process of having one division, I think it's been as fair as possible, with everybody having their opinions, so it'll always come down to a vote. Of course it will. I think it's good for the sport, Nigel coming back.
And most people in the Championship and League One voted for a merged competition next year, presumably. Well, I assume, because otherwise it wouldn't have happened, would it?
Yeah, I think there were, I don't know if you saw the proposals on the table, Martin, but there was like 3 proposals. Well, 4 if you like. One is stay the same. So if 2 teams go up in the Championship would only be 11, and the League One would stay at 10. We played in the League One with only 10 clubs, and it was a disaster because you don't continuously play every week. You have long periods not playing. So and then the other proposals were 2 conferences, East and West. East was really juicy, everybody playing each other. The West wasn't so much. The Cumbrian teams were in there, London were in there, Hurricanes. Yes. Yeah. And then there was another proposal for three conferences of 7 teams. Yeah. The reason we voted for the one league, I just wanted it because there were all confusion in terms of the fixture list, and the only way in my head I could understand things was to make it as simple as possible. So when you're a fan and you look at the competition underneath Super League, there's one league table. There's one league table, and where you're sitting on the league table. The fixtures will be a little bit complicated, but I get the grading system. So if 2 teams go up in from our Championship this year, we'll play the remaining. So there'll be 11 teams effectively Championship clubs. We'll play the other 10 twice. So so that'd be 20 if your fixture's gone, and then the other 6 you'll be playing League One clubs. So they've done it that way, which I get. That's probably the fairest because you can't play each other twice.
No.
So
that'd be 40 fixtures, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But yeah,
the thing is, my contention is you want to avoid. You've already mentioned actually at the weekend, Super League had far too many one-sided games. I think of the 4 games of the 6 games at the weekend, 4 of them were won by more than 30 points, which is not very satisfactory, I don't think. And you don't really want to replicate that. You don't want to have 80-point score lines in the merged Championship and League One, which you'd get if, say, Bradford played Newcastle, wouldn't you, or Oldham played Newcastle, as things stand at the
Yeah.
moment. A graded fixture list will tend to try and avoid that possibility, and it gives more chance to everybody, I think, to be honest, and it will certainly be more exciting, I would have thought.
Yeah, I agree. And again, going to, I think Super League, if they do go to 14 teams, it needs to be managed really well in terms of the media and the press out there, because there is
Oh
going to
yeah,
be some big scores next year. Especially you get to March, April, Jake, and you get a couple of injuries to your best players. We haven't got the depth of Super League. We haven't got the experience of the other Super League clubs. Do you know? So it is going to be tricky, and we've talked about this internally. I've talked about it with Bill over hours and hours of what it will look like for us in Super League next year. The initial celebrations of being in and doing that. It soon come to reality where you're
yes.
going to St Helens on a Friday night with a couple of injuries. So you've got to be careful what you wish for sometimes.
Yeah, you like just before when you were mentioning about your recruitment being on pause, have you found with some of your discussions with agents that there are players holding out signing contracts because they want to see, if it is a 14-team competition, there might be a bit more money on offer from other clubs?
I could name you 5 or 6 now, Jake, who are waiting for that 16th of October. They're going to see which 2 or 3 clubs go up, because they haven't got a contract with the current Super League team. So they don't necessarily want to sign with Oldham now because they want to play Super League. So they will sign for Oldham if you're in Super League. Of course they will. You know what I mean? So yeah, I could name quite a few players who are waiting to be Super League players.
It's interesting you say that, because I actually looked at all the players whose contracts expire at the end of this season, and you're never quite sure you've got an accurate list, because
Yeah,
sometimes a player might have signed a contract extension and it's not been publicised. But there are a significant number. I mean, I actually cited one player in my column in League Express this week. That was Rowan Milnes, who had a great game for Salford in their incredible win at Warrington at last Friday night, and he's a player who I rate quite highly. I struggle to understand why Castleford let him go, to be honest, Mike. So, but I think he's still a potential Super League player, and a player who would do a good job for one of the teams that's coming up. But if I were his manager, I'd be saying exactly what you've said. Hold on and see
yeah,
who it is, see who's going to be there, because I thought he had a great part in that win
yeah,
over the wire on Friday night, and they're obviously more like him, aren't there?
yeah. There's a couple. And again, we're looking at a couple of Salford players. Should they get not be in the Super League for next year? We've already signed Ryan Briley. Ryan's been great. He signed a two and a bit year contract with us. He wants us to take us to Super League, but if not, he's committed to being with Oldham for 2 years. Jack Ormonroyd is another guy who's seen our vision regardless of Super League. Josh Drinkwater, of course, has been Martyn. He's been outstanding for us since he came in at the beginning of the season. So we've got quite a few Super League players who are committed to Oldham regardless. But also, should we get the vote, they've got the experience for us in that Super League competition as well.
Mm. So you've got a base from which to build. In other words, if you
Yeah, I
do
think
get
we've got 16, 17 players definitely signed. We've got a squad of 25, 26 who are holding on. And of the 16 players, there's 14 that have had Super League experience already. So again, we've shown our ambition, before this 14 team competition, race, 14 to the race to Super League. Before this came in, we shown our ambition right from the start. We're signing Jordan Turner, for example, our first marquee signing, an Oldham lad who's recently retired. I don't know if you picked that up, Martyn.
I was going to ask you about him. Yeah, no, a player I've admired for a long time, Jordan, and always seems an incredibly genuine guy to me.
Yeah, I think it was really difficult for him to announce his retirement, but injuries caught up with him during the season, and he was disappointed. Obviously, that Featherstone knocked us out of the 1895 semi-final. That was his ultimate dream to
Play at
lead,
Wembley.
to
Yeah.
play at Wembley for the first time. But I just said to him, "You've done your job. Your job was to put Oldham on the map again in terms of winning competitions." And I said, you were the catalyst to get other players in there. Your professionalism that you brought, you were our captain. So you've done your job. Don't be have anything other than be proud of what you've achieved at Oldham. So and again this year he played with injuries. He needed minor operations on his knees, and he wouldn't have them because at one stage during the season we was a lot of injuries, especially in the centres. So he carried on playing for us. So again, he put the team first, and I think we just want to wish him well in the future because he's been great for us.
Will he still have a link with the club, do you think, going forward? Because he's an Oldham lad, isn't he?
Yeah, he's an Oldham lad. I think he's business wise. I think he wants that to take off. He's looking after disadvantaged kids, and quite a few Oldham players are working for him at the moment. So I think he's going to put his heart and soul into that. But he just said to us, "Look, if ever you need me, I'll be around."
Right. Oh, that's marvellous, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah. Just one thing, by the way, talking about Wembley, you must have been a bit disappointed, to say the least, not to get there this year in the 1895 Cup final, because whenever anybody talks to me about Oldham, the one thing that's bound to come up at some point is that the club's never been to Wembley. And
Yeah.
obviously that's something that hopefully one day will be changed. But the 1895 Cup, I get the feeling that it probably, if it continues, that the final might be moved away from Wembley. How do you feel about that?
Well, if it is, I can guarantee you we'll get to the final. That's nailed on. I think the opportunity we had this year, Martyn. You won't realise that we had every round at home in the 1895. We had a semi-final at home against Featherstone. That week was incredible around the town, the buzz around the town, and it's the only performance this year where, whatever reason, we just didn't turn up for whatever reason. I think there's a hoodoo on us or something like that. But we've not played like that ever in my time back. So we didn't quite make it. It'll be ironic, wouldn't it, if they did change the final of the 1895 Cup to a different venue then, and then we get there.
Do you think they ought to change it, by the way? What do you think? Do you think it ought to continue at Wembley?
Yeah, I don't know. You had, again, from a playing point of view and a spectator point of view, I think it's great for a couple of clubs outside Super League to get a chance to play at Wembley. It's a dream come true for everybody, isn't it? The financial side of it is where the stewarding side of it, the cost of everything.
Yes.
That's where I'm not so sure.
No, none of us really know what the financial requirements are, do we? I don't think so. Difficult to comment with authority, I suppose. But just looking at this year's championship competition, Mike, I think it's been a really great competition, and right up till the weekend just gone, I think there were about 8 or 9 clubs still in with a chance of getting into the playoffs. It was, the top 4 of which you're one, of course. You've got York, Toulouse, Bradford, and yourselves are clearly, ahead of the rest. but the others still battling away for the final two places. It's been a really great competition, and York have done extremely well, haven't they, under Mark Applegarth? What do you think about what they've achieved this year?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, the consistency they've shown, and they've continuously kept on, adding little bits and pieces to the squad. I think they've been pretty much injury free, and they've had a settled team. But they are tough to beat, and I think Mark, after what happened, at Wakefield with relegation and stuff, how he's bounced back, and he's a lovely guy. I
Oh
didn't
yeah,
know, I didn't know him, but he's a lovely guy. We wouldn't mind going back to York in that semi-final. We wouldn't mind that. We think we could go toe to toe. We went there very recently, and we was winning with 8 minutes to go, and things unravelled for us. But they are, we have little bets, me and Bill every week, and they played Toulouse away recently, and we both said that we think the York could win, and they did. So they are the best team in the competition, very, very closely followed by the other two you mentioned. Toulouse and Bradford are very difficult. I think Bradford, controversial, and would have said this, I think Bradford have an unfair advantage with their pitch. It's like a schoolboys pitch, and they've got Brian Noble's obviously recruited accordingly to the pitch. The biggest side, one of the biggest sides I know.
but it didn't do much good last Friday night again, or Saturday night rather, against Toulouse, did it? They slipped up there, and I was really surprised by that result, I've got to say.
Yeah, you back Bradford at home against anyone, this year for sure. That did surprise me. What didn't surprise me was, there weren't many tries scored because the pitch doesn't allow it, kind of stuff. You do a couple of passes and you're getting tackled into touch. So, but yeah, it is what it is. We feel we've done quite a bit of recruitment recently, Martin, and we feel that we've still got our best in us, even with just one league game to go in the playoffs. We still think we're still striving to find our best form. Our resilience is there for everyone to see. We Batley, London, and York. And who do we play Sunday? Doncaster, of course. With them close wins, we think our resilience is there. Our defence is getting back to normal, but we're still finding out. We're still not finding the feet. That's the wrong phrase. We're still not playing our best rugby on attack in terms of in their opposition 20. So we can, Sean our coach, Sean Long, our coach, that's his skill set is the attack and the players that we put on and the way you manipulate defences. So with a combination of couple of different halfbacks, he's now put Ryan Briley at fullback and PLT, who's a fantastic player, Martin. I don't know if you know him.
I'm just amazed that Hull KR haven't given him more opportunities at their club, obviously to your advantage.
Yeah, we'd signed PLT in an heartbeat. He was a game breaker on Sunday, for example, fantastic break through the middle. So if we can just, we play Featherstone away at weekend, and I think if we want to win the competition, we have to go to. It's not Post Office Road anymore, isn't it? What is it?
Millennium Stadium these days.
Millennium Stadium. We want to go. We have to put a statement out there that we can win the competition by going to Featherstone, and then we have a week off the last week of the season. So it's a great opportunity to freshen people up, but also you got 2 weeks preparation for your quarter final playoff game at Boundary Park, and we're hoping that. Well, I'm hoping that in them few weeks I mentioned there, we get our attack back to its best.
Can I just ask you one thing, a much more general question? And it's something I mentioned in my column this week, and I'd like Jake's view on this as well. We used to have a sort of conventional wisdom in British Rugby League that Australian Rugby League was very defence orientated, with not much sense of adventure, and we were always far more attack minded and so on. And we would always tend to say that our game for that reason was more entertaining to watch. And yet, last Friday night I watched the Hull KR St Helens game, which was an incredibly attritional game, fascinating game actually, but not much ball movement, to be perfectly honest. And Hull KR won in the end 10-6, but both sides, one try each and very much focused on defence. And then you watch the NRL games, and there were the two Queensland derbies, weren't there? The Dolphins played the Gold Coast Titans, and the Broncos were up in Townsville at the Cowboys, Jake. And both those games were fantastic in terms of the way the ball was moved around. It was open, it was thrilling, it was really entertaining. And I just wonder whether that situation is actually now reversing, and if so, why is it happening? But Jake, what do you think about that?
Mate, I think two factors really. I think the game's just officiated differently over here. The ruck's a lot quicker. So that's one factor, I think. And a lot of players that do go over to England to play, they mention that as well. I'm pretty good mates with Ben Condon, who's playing for the Vikings at the moment. And he was rumoured to have signed with Lee before the season started, but unfortunately had a bit of an accident and failed a medical. And I think he might be rumoured to sign with them next year. But he said to me he was blown away by how slow the ruck speed is and how much you can get away with in the ruck. I think the other factor too is, we're not so much this year, but we're pretty blessed over here with dry weather footy. It doesn't rain often. It has rained a lot this year, but when you combine those two factors of a quick ruck speed and dry weather, you're going to get some fast-paced, free-flowing footy. But yeah, I'm not sure, Mike, would you agree with?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the speed of the ball is everything, isn't there? Basically, quick play of the ball, you can do what you want. You don't need any players. You just go at the defence, and you get that roll on that everyone talks about. So I think Sean's frustrated every week with this, because we are very much in an attacking side, and obviously teams come to upset that, and the first thing they target is the ruck. Slowing that down as best they can, and I think it needs looking at. I nothing can be done this season. I wouldn't want it to be changed this season.
No.
But, yeah, you got to look at that for next year, yeah, for sure.
And just looking at Super League, Mike, again, it's an interesting competition, isn't it? With 7 clubs still in with a chance of being in the playoffs, and Hull KR obviously looking like they're going to win the League Leaders' Shield, but quite a strong competition for second place. St Helens playing Wigan this weekend. Saints could go up to second, and of course, if they can beat Wigan, who do you think's going to win the Super League title this year? If you were if you were a betting man, I don't know. You've hinted that you might be. If you were a betting man, who do you think you'd put your money on if you were forced to put £5 on one of the teams there?
Yeah, I'm always a favourites man. I'd always tend to, when whichever team's at home, I usually go for that team. Usually, Hull KR have been brilliant this year, haven't they, and stuff. And even against St Helens, I thought they were really, really solid. I think in that they probably needed that game, like a playoff type game. You'd be a fool not to back Wigan, wouldn't you? You'd be a fool to think they're out of the mix.
Oh yeah.
And I've been really impressed with Lee this year. The start of the season, 1-0 win at Central Park, if you can remember that game. And recently
that game demonstrated that a game without any tries can still be a thrilling game.
Yeah, and recently they've beaten the Wigans and the OKRs. They had that spell, I think Warrington as well, where it might not have been Warrington, but they look like outside the two I mentioned, they look like they could upset the apple cart. The other one that's quite interesting for me is what Leeds are doing at the moment. They seem to be getting better every week.
They do, don't they?
Yeah, it was an impressive win at the weekend at Hull. They turned over. Did they turn over Lee recently?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I think that I think Hull and Wakefield. I think them two have had a great seasons. Wakefield to be to be even in contention. I think is a fantastic, and a Hull. I think John Cartwright's turned them around. The only one I've not mentioned there, obviously, St Helens. Um, uh, that'd be a great game this weekend, won't it?
Certainly will. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I hope they, I hope they, I hope they do well and get deep into the playoffs. I think this weekend will dictate that. I think as if Wigan can go there with a couple of injuries and still win, it's not looking good for St Helens, but vice versa.
Yeah.
The other way around, then yeah. So I think the answer to the question is I'm going to go for OKR.
Yeah, I think Leeds are the real dark horses actually, because as you say, they seem to be getting better every week, just at the right time. And I was talking to Brad Arthur yesterday, and the thing that strikes me about Leeds is they've had quite a few injuries this year and a few changes and so on, but every player who has come in has not weakened the side. They've, in fact, they've introduced quite a few younger players this year who have all actually, the latest being this young lad Presley Cassell, who's only 18 but is coming in, into the Leeds pack and shining, to be perfectly honest. And it's not weakened them at all. So I think they've got a really great chance. And what do you think about Jake Kearnan, Mike? You've been obviously in an international coaching setup, albeit in rugby union, of course, with England. But
Yeah.
if you were on the England coaching team for this year's Ashes, would Jake Kearnan be a guy who you would want to push forward?
Yeah, I think you as an international coach, you have a squad that you don't probably reveal to anyone who are the players in form, 100%. Then you have another like little squad at the side who are not quite performing, but you trust them. You trust them. You've been worked with them before. You know that potentially their form's going to return at some stage. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. So you have like two squads, if you like, and some might be in both, kind of stuff. So with Jake, obviously it's the trust. It looks like with Sean, can he trust him? Has he worked with him before? Does he follow game plans? Is he good for team culture? All them things. So I'll tell you a little story about Jake in July 24, so only last year, just past last year, and he was at Huddersfield, and we looked to sign him for Oldham in League One, right? We couldn't quite get it over the line, but that just my point being that just shows how far he's come in over just over 12 months to be the form player of the competition, which I think he is. Do you know what I mean? So he's certainly beyond Sean's radar for sure. I think whether he makes it or not is a different matter.
But it's a big feather in Brad Arthur's cap that he's got such great performances out of him. Whatever Brad Arthur has said to Jake, it's clearly worked, hasn't it?
Yeah. And I like the way they're playing Leeds. I like the way Lockley Miller at fullback plays. They seem to take risks, if you like.
Absolutely.
They offload the football in the backfield. They're playing the game a little bit differently than most teams. And the one thing I want Oldham to be, and this is not being arrogant, Martyn, at all, but I don't want us to copy anybody. Do you know what I mean? I want us to go and be the team that we want to be. If we're chasing and copying people, not chasing, but if we're copying people, we'll never go past them because they'll improve and stuff like that. And I see things, but I think Paul Rowley's a great coach in terms of the way he was coaching Salford. I saw things differently at Salford, the way they played than other teams. And I'm seeing that with Leeds at the moment.
Yeah. I noticed, Jake, that Newcastle are parting company with Adam O'Brien, aren't they, at the end of this season? And one of the guys that they had in their sights was Willie Peters, but I think they asked Willie to put in an application there, and Willie's turned them down and said he's going to stay with Hull KR, which must be terrific news for Hull KR. But who would you like to see coaching at Newcastle?
Well, mate, I'd like to see Willie Peters come back, but I can understand his decisioning and wanting to stay in Hull KR. He probably hasn't achieved those goals that he set out for himself. I'm sure he wants to win a grand final before he leaves there. I don't know. They've talked about Blake Green potentially being a
Brian
candidate.
McDermott's there as well, isn't he? It's amazing. He's been the assistant to Adam O'Brien for a while, but doesn't seem to get much of a mention when it comes to taking over the top job, despite his experience. Would
That's it.
that
I mean,
surprise
just
you a bit, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's been in the game forever, hasn't he, Brian? And he's done really, really well. So you would think internally that they're looking at him for sure.
Mm, mm, absolutely. Anyway, mate, look, I think we've been speaking for an hour. We don't want to. We haven't really got the, all day to speak. Unfortunately, we've all got other things to do. And Mike, it's been great to have you on board with us today. Jake, I think, is there anything else you want to add before we finish?
just quickly, mate, are you going to recruit the son to come and play for you towards the end of his career, perhaps?
I'd love to. I really would love to. There's things to conquer for him though at the moment. The 2027 World Cup in Australia. He wants to lead the team there for England. Yeah, and there's all sorts of rumours going on about this 360 league and this new competition coming in. I think he's got one or two things to tick off, and like I said to you earlier, he's not disrespectful to know how hard it is anyway to play in Super League and stuff. So, but I'll always keep that candle burning for sure.
Do you think that league will happen, by the way, Mike? I mean, you must be better informed than most of us in that regard.
I
Because, I mean,
don't
they
think.
have targeted one or two NRL players as well, haven't they? And maybe even Super League players. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Obviously, they're talking to everybody. That competition and the money that's been thrown about or been talked about is crazy. The thing that will be its downfall, it will be the international game. So if you said to someone like George, look, you come and play in this league, but your international career's over, then George will not take that, because he wants to play for his country first and foremost. It's not about the money. So that'll be the. I'm not too sure. It's gone. It was quite loud a couple of months ago. It's quieting down, but I think they have to make a decision by the end of October.
Mm,
Yeah.
right. Well, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks for your time today, Mike. You've been very generous. All the best for the rest of the season, mate. And we look forward to
Yeah.
getting you back on the podcast again sometime in the future.
Hopefully, when you're in Super League, mate.
Thanks, guys. See you
Thanks a
later.
lot.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye
Cheers.
bye.